Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, Brunning, Bruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Friday. We are heading into week 4 of the NFL season, which almost feels a little bit hard to believe. But then you see all the injuries that have stacked up, and it feels more like we should be in week 10. But this is the last full week of play with all 32 teams in action before we start bye weeks and London weeks next week. So the NFL just keeps throwing things at us. This is our second consecutive week where we're going to have a Monday night doubleheader. I mean, this is not your 2020s NFL or 2019 NFL. This is like the modern era, wild schedules, all kinds of stuff getting thrown all about. Dennis, it can be a lot to keep track of.
I'm just here so I don't get fined. I just kind of look at the slate as it is. I go through. I mean, everybody has to deal with buys. Everybody has to deal with injuries. We can hoot and holler about, don't play games on Thursdays. I don't mind having 2 games on Mondays. It's just I don't get that much into it. I watch the games. I make my notes. Try to prepare my fantasy teams for victory. Which, depending on what the team is, I got a lot of dynasty teams. Victory in some instances is really losing.
Well, if victory is losing, then the Giants are the biggest winners. But last night they hosted the Cowboys for Thursday Night Football, hoping to get that elusive first home win of the season. Instead, they got 5 field goals, and the Cowboys got a 20-15 victory. Dennis, for the Cowboys, we thought Ezekiel Elliott might have some sneaky flex fantasy value, but it seems like that backfield, really the one you want is Rico Dowdle. 11 carries, only 46 yards, not great. Does catch a 15-yard pass for a touchdown. Seems to be getting more carries, more yardage, and more opportunities than Zeke. Is he the backfield play you want there if you have to play one?
If you have to, it certainly looks like it. He outsnapped Zeke yesterday, 45 to 18%. The wild card is fullback Hunter Lupke, who actually played 52% of the snaps, but he's not really getting enough volume to be fantasy relevant unless you're hoping he falls into the end zone. But Dowdle is playing on passing downs. He's catching passes. He's running the ball. He shows a little more burst than Zeke. The Cowboys are in a tough spot with their, Jerry didn't do a great job managing the salary cap, and
which he has said
they just aren't able to afford some positions right now. And
running back's one of them.
With he came right out and said it the other day. They didn't sign Derrick Henry, who wanted to go there because they just couldn't afford him.
Yeah, and we'll see how it plays out. They're also dealing with some injuries now. Looks like DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons will miss their next game, but they have a few days off.
That could be good for fantasy, to be fair, for both the teams going against them and Dallas for having to keep up with the teams going against them.
For the Giants, Malik Neighbors has been incredible, but sneaky great play so far this season has been Wandale Robinson. He had 6 for 44 in the opener, 2 for 18 in week 2, but catches a touchdown, 7 for 61 last week, and 11 for 71 last night. Is Wandale Robinson becoming an every week flex option?
Yeah, he's only averaging 7.5 yards per catch, and that's not real high. But he's second on the team in targets with 38 targets. Has more than twice the number of targets as the number 3 target earner. And I say it like that because I'm including running backs, tight ends, and wide receivers. Darius Slayton has 15. So Wandale is getting open in short area. He's doing that Hunter Renfrow, Wes Welker, these guys that operate within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage and get open there. Wandale's doing that, and he's catching the ball a lot. Daniel Jones is finding him. I want to see, his flaws really came to bear at the end of the game on that deeper pass down the left sideline where his 5'8" frame just couldn't go up and get the ball that would have extended that drive. If that had been Slayton or Hyatt that went up there that had ran that route, they could have went up and got that pass. He just didn't have what it took. Now, to be fair, Daniel Jones throws an awful deep ball. There were opportunities in the game yesterday that, these guys were running down the field behind the defender, and they had to stop, grab a sandwich, wait for the ball to come down. That was kind of ugly.
Well, both these teams have a little bit of a break before their next game, but let's dive into the rest of week 4, and that kicks off with the 2-1 New Orleans Saints at the 1-2 Atlanta Falcons. Dennis, Rashid Shaheed, pretty good games in week 1. Week 2 looked like kind of the deep threat, a goose egg in week 3. Do you have more confidence that he gets back on track in week 4?
So did you happen to look at his target volume?
It's not incredibly high.
It's 5 in game 1, 4 in game 2, 5 in game 3. Just didn't convert in the third game. That's what it's going to be all year long. He may have a couple games where he pops off for 6, 7, 8 targets, but by and large, he's the guy that's going deep, making big plays. He's good for 5 targets a game, and he's going to have a high ADOT. He's a pretty good receiver. It's just the role that he's in and what he brings to that team. Derek Carr isn't afraid to push the ball downfield. And so, I like Shaheed. You put him in, he's in that Venmo of, with Gabe Davis, those kind of guys. Great for best ball.
I like him a little better than Gabe Davis, but
he's an upside. He's the classic. I need upside in my flex position. He might get you 3 points. He might get you 13. He might get you 25.
For the Falcons, Drake London and Kyle Pitts got more of the publicity going into the season, but the one that seems to have developed the best chemistry early is Darnell Mooney. How are you feeling about him as a flex option?
It's almost like everybody forgot Darnell Mooney put up a 1,000-yard season in his second year. He's no slouch as a wide receiver. And when you have somebody like Drake London across from him and then Kyle Pitts who kind of loosen up the coverage on him because of their, they're not really producing at the level you would hope for their profiles. They do draw a lot of respect. And Mooney has a different game. He's a deep threat. He's the speed guy in that offense. He's a weekly flex with wide receiver 3, maybe even the occasional low-end wide receiver 2 upside game. He's sitting at wide receiver 35 right now. But, in 3 games, he's played 95, 100, and 93% of the snaps. So he's on the field, and he's going to get some opportunities. You just got to be out there with him. And, again, very similar to Shaheed. He's out there. He isn't going to get a ton of targets most weeks, but he's going to convert some, and some weeks it's going to be real good for you.
Given the lineup apocalypse we're in, you might be playing both of them. I am taking the Falcons at home.
I'm taking the Falcons as well. But speaking of lineup apocalypse, I actually, in the Fantasy Life app old writers league, I actually started Dowdell and Wandale.
I mean, I've started a lot of guys I never thought I was going to be starting.
I would love to say that was because I was super smart, but I have the two of them on a team in another league and have both of them on my bench there. So it was just I didn't have anybody else to play.
The 1-2 Rams are at the 1-2 Chicago Bears. Dennis, still no Cooper Kupp, no Puka Nacua. What Rams pass catcher do you like?
I was surprised to see Tutu Atwell dominate snaps like he did. I really thought that they liked Tyler Johnson more. But Demarcus Robinson and Atwell were the guys. The Bears are bottom 9 in receptions, receiving yards, and fantasy points against. So because they give up so many receiving fantasy points and yards, it feels like you've got to nail which guy is it going to be. We've seen them with Kupp and Puka. We've seen the Rams now go with 2 receivers putting up points. I feel pretty good DeMarcus Robinson is going to be one of them. Is this going to be a Tutu Atwell week? Is it going to be a Tyler Johnson week? Is it going to be a Colby Parkinson week? You know, it's hard to say. It's a gamble. I probably lean more towards Johnson than Atwell.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think whoever ends up getting covered by Jalen Johnson is probably not the one that you want for the Rams. I've liked what I've seen from Atwell. We'll have to see. I'm hoping I don't have to play any of them, but who knows? For the Bears, the running game has been a disaster. DeAndre Swift has been a disaster if you're starting him. Last week, only 20 yards on 13 carries against what should have been a fairly soft Colts front. Roschon Johnson actually getting involved and outrushed him in only 8 carries. What are you doing with this Bears backfield?
I wish I had some kind of certainty because the Rams give up the second most rush yards or rush attempts and rush yards in the NFL and the 6th most fantasy points to running backs. So I wish I knew. It feels like one of those games where Khalil Herbert just comes out of nowhere with 16 carries for 88 yards. And, he's done that in the past. But Roschon got a little bit of volume. And are they finally at the point where they're like, hey, let's see what this guy can do if we give him a chance? Because DeAndre Swift isn't doing it for whatever reason. It's just not happening for him. Seemed like he had a ton of talent coming out of Georgia. Detroit soured on him. Philadelphia was like, yeah, we're one and done. We're good with him. And he just it feels like he should have been able to stake a claim in this Bears backfield with Roschon and Khalil Herbert. And it just feels like Herbert keeps pushing him out of the way a little bit. And now Roschon is finally starting to get some run. This should be a chance for the Bears running backs to get right. But if you don't know who it's going to be tough to start any of them with confidence.
Well, last week should have been a get-right game too, and they were all pretty terrible. I'm kind of staying away from this backfield this week unless you're desperate. I am taking Chicago at home.
So am I.
Next up, what could be one of the better games of the early part, the 3-0 Minnesota Vikings at the 2-1 Green Bay Packers. Dennis, Aaron Jones has been off to a hot start for the season. He has already talked about having picked out the place he wants to leap when he returns to Lambeau. Could this be another good week for him?
I don't know how good it's going to be on the ground, but the Packers give up the 5th most receiving yards to running backs, and we know Aaron Jones can catch the ball. So he should be able to put up a pretty good day. We know he wants to do well versus the Packers. Sam Darnold has been playing really well. They've got Justin Jefferson and Jalen Nailor's playing good. And I think, don't they get Jordan Addison back this week?
Jordan Addison is trending toward playing.
So as long as Sam Darnold doesn't, freak out again and kind of revert back to bad Sam, it should be a pretty good game for the Vikings and for Aaron Jones. It's early in the season. I don't think we are at the point yet where we're at risk of Jones just running out of gas because he's 28, 29 years old now. He's got a few carries under his belt. So I feel like this is an RB1 week for Aaron Jones. Not the RB1, but an RB1.
He is 29. He'll turn 30 in December. Jordan Love, a true game time decision, but they are reasonably confident he might be able to go this week. If he does, what are you expecting to see?
Well, I stuck him back in my lineup in the Fantasy Football Roundtable Redraft League because they're showing that they're telling me there's a chance.
He's been practicing.
Devonta Smith out of that super flex spot because he's out. I think if Love plays, he's going to be a little bit limited with his mobility. He's a very mobile quarterback. He doesn't run a lot, but he is mobile. And the Bears versus quarterback stats look really good. So it looks like it might be a tough game. But, they played Will Levis, who threw for 127 yards, and Anthony Richardson, who threw for 167 yards. And I dare say Jordan Love is a substantially better passer than
those guys.
Either of those two guys.
I'm actually taking the Packers at home.
So I had picked the Packers in my quick and dirty thing at the season picks at the beginning of the year, but I'm switching it over to the Vikings. I'm riding Sam Darnold.
Next up, the 3-0 Pittsburgh Steelers at the 1-2 Indianapolis Colts. Dennis, Jaylen Warren already ruled out. Najee Harris was a little banged up this week, but should be in line for a pretty monster workload. What are you doing with him?
Well, the Colts give up the most rushing yards to running backs in the NFL through the first 3 games, 409 yards.
Even after not allowing the Bears to do anything last week.
But they've only given up 1 touchdown. So what this means is 120-yard Cordero Patterson incoming.
Oh, God.
No, I think that if you've got Najee, you're rolling him out and you feel very, very good. They're going to grind him. He's a big back, and Mike Tomlin is good with just riding him. Arthur Smith they're going to use Cordero Patterson as a change of pace back. They'll let him get a few series. They'll let him get some opportunities, but they're going to I think Najee gets, 20 carries, 25 touches in this game.
For the Colts, what do we make of Anthony Richardson? He has really struggled all 3 games, but particularly the last 2 with his passing.
It's funny. I saw a tweet that said, Justin Fields is who we all wanted Anthony Richardson to be.
Took him years to get there.
Between Georgia, Ohio State, and Chicago and Pittsburgh, I think Fields has started something like 50 games. Anthony Richardson has started like 14 games, including college and the pros, or 18 games. There was quite a disparity. I think Richardson is going to be okay. You've got to give him time to get experience. He's got a big arm. He can run. They've got to structure the offense to what he does well. And what that means right now is it's going to be a low volume passing attack, which is terrible for Michael Pittman, because when he does take theyose deep shots, they're going to A.D. Mitchell and Alec Pierce. So Pittman kind of, even in games where Pittman gets quote unquote volume, he's getting 6 or 7 targets, but he's just converting 3 or 4 for 35 yards. And then you have Pierce go out and catch a 66-yard touchdown pass, and it kind of just takes the wind out of your sails. Sunday, he had a sub 50% completion rate. He's got a 3-6 touchdown to interception ratio. He's got he's 25th lowest sack rate, but he's also 25th in pass attempts. So, yeah, he's big, he's mobile, so he doesn't get sacked a lot, but he's not back there a lot either. Richardson has to let the game come to him. They've got to put him in positions to be comfortable. Do something where it's a quick one-read decision and let let that receiver get open so he can make a good anticipation throw, things can loosen up. It's going to take some time. This isn't the year. I got to be honest. I've got a couple teams where I have Anthony Richardson and Jaden Daniels on, and I really hoped Richardson would be further along, but it is what
Daniels looks good.
It is what it is.
I am taking the Steelers to go 4-0.
So I initially had the Colts, but I too have switched to the Steelers.
Next up, the 1-2 Denver Broncos at the 2-1 New York Jets. Dennis, kind of a dreaded committee back there for Denver, but how are you feeling about Javonte Williams?
He's basically leading that backfield in everything. Carries, targets, receptions. He's just not getting into the end zone. I mean, but the team in general isn't scoring a whole lot of points. So, and when they get down there, it seems like Bo Nix turns into fucking Michael Vick or some shit. Pardon my French. But Bo Nix is running a lot. That hurts my Cortland Sutton shares as well. So I still think Javante's the guy. I just know I just don't know that there's going to be a high enough volume to make him more than a low end 2 to flex player next weeks.
Yeah, I think he's more in the RB3, 4 range. There's not enough volume, and they are committed to doing 2 or 3 backs because now Tyler Beatty is in there. It's not great. You might be looking for some flex options this week, especially with all the injuries. How are you feeling about Mike Williams and Allen Lazard?
So Lazard is playing a lot, even with Mike Williams getting healthy. Williams played 18% of the snaps week 1, 65% week 2, but only 45 again last week. Lazard has been at 100, 82, and 84. And I think that's an Aaron Rodgers kind of, this is my guy. I'm comfortable with him. I feel like I can trust him. And so we're going to be battling that all season until Mike Williams starts to produce and Aaron feels like he can trust him. Until then, it feels like Lazard is the 2 and Williams is the 3.
Yeah. Yeah, and if I had to pick one to flex this week, it would be Lazard for me. I think that both of them could see a few targets because it's very likely Pat Surtain is on Garrett Wilson, and we saw last week any receiver that wasn't Mike Evans was getting targeted. But Tampa Bay let me down last week. I took them in Eliminator, and they eliminated my Eliminator entry.
I feel like there's 3 people left in all Eliminator leagues combined. There's 3 people left.
I'm taking the Jets this week.
So am I.
The 2-1 Philadelphia Eagles at the 2-1 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Dennis, Devonta Smith already ruled out. A.J. Brown has a slim chance to go, really a game-time decision. Britton Covey got put on IR. If Brown is unable to go, that kind of leaves him with Paris Campbell, Jahan Dotson. Are you trusting any of those guys?
So look, I'm going to give him a Band-Aid, a popsicle, rub some dirt on it, pat him on the butt, and tell him to get out there and make some plays. Dang it. No, I'm not stoked by the prospects of Paris Campbell and who was the other person?
Jahan Dotson, Johnny Wilson.
I would have liked if they had gotten Dotson involved more after they got him. It would be a lot easier to feel comfortable about him. Johnny Wilson is actually the guy that I like. He's a mismatch at 6'6". He is an okay route runner. He's got pretty good speed. I think he could produce some unexpected volume in this game because they're going to have to throw it to somebody. As much as I love my Buckeye Paris Campbell, it just feels like he'll be injured by halftime, and he's very much in the Wan'Dale Robinson scope of where he runs his routes. So, he'd be a perfect match for Bo Nix because all of his routes are at the line of scrimmage. So it's going to be Johnny Wilson and Dallas Goedert down the field. So to me, what was that thing I put up here? Let's see.
I think this is the week I'm taking a flyer on Jahan Dotson if I'm desperate.
Tampa gives up the most receptions to running backs in the NFL. So I wouldn't be surprised if Barkley got 12 targets.
I mean, Barkley and Goddard, I think I know you're playing. If Brown can go, I guess I'm putting him out there. But if he can't go, I with you. The wide receivers scare me. But they got Jahan Dotson for a reason. You have to expect that at some point in time when they have no other options, which could very well be this week, they're going to give him a look. Last week in the backfield, Bucky Irving got mixed in and looked pretty good. He has a little bit of a hamstring injury, questionable, but it's trending toward him playing. What do you think of the backfield of him and Rachaad White?
So Bucky is in the running game, and we're getting all excited because Rachaad White is so bad carrying the ball. White is a phenomenal pass-catching running back. And at his size, you would really like him to be like, it's like this dude could be a bell cow, but he just doesn't carry the ball well. Irvin at 5'9" and 203 or whatever he is running the ball. He's got great vision. He runs the ball really, really well. But he's still only playing about 30% of the snaps. So what it looks like is Irvin's getting the ball a lot when he's in there. He just isn't in there a lot. He's a good pass catcher as well. I don't think we're at the point where he's going to push to make it a 50-50 split yet. I mean, it could happen this week, but I think they're comfortable with the way they're going because, they're 2-1. They're going to keep trying to do, they've got Godwin, they've got Evans. White's good at what he does. They're going to keep doing that. So I don't think they're looking to shake things up too much in Tampa.
I am taking the Eagles.
I'm taking the home team. I'm going with the Buccaneers.
Next up, the 0-3 Cincinnati Bengals at the 1-2 Carolina Panthers. Dennis, what do the Bengals need to do to turn it around?
As much as I love the Andy Dalton story, the revenge game, Andy Dalton doesn't play defense, and the defense isn't good in Carolina either. Panthers are giving up the second most passing touchdowns. No, they're not touching. No, the second most passing touchdowns.
They're
and they 26 in sacks. So not only are they giving up a bunch of touchdowns, their line isn't getting to the quarterback either. And they give up the fewest QB hits. Like they're like literally, they just don't put any pressure on the quarterback. And you can't do that with Joe Burrow. He's going to pick you apart. And then you look on the other side. So they're not getting any pressure on the quarterback. Quarterback can do pretty much whatever he wants back there. They also give up the fifth most rushing yards in the NFL. Zach Moss and Chase Brown, welcome to the show.
Yeah, we shall see. Meanwhile, for the Carolina Panthers, with Andy Dalton in there, they got the offense going. Deontay Johnson came to life last week. Has a little bit of a groin injury, but it looks like he's trending toward playing. Are you back to being excited about putting him in your lineup?
I'm a whole lot more excited now. Andy Dalton is the quarterback. That's for dang sure. Andy Dalton he knows what the job is. Get the ball to Deontay Johnson. Allen, but now Thielen is out for a few weeks. We'll see. Will Xavier Legette or Jonathan Mingo be able to step up? Chuba Hubbard looked great. Miles Sanders is looking pretty good. On the plus side, Cincinnati's defense isn't a whole lot better than Carolina's defense.
That is true. I am taking the Bengals because they've got to get a win at some point.
Bengals for me too.
Next up, the 0-3 Jacksonville Jaguars at the 2-1 Houston Texans. Dennis, Trevor Lawrence has struggled to start this season to the point that even his head coach was a little non-committal about whether he's unequivocally the starter going forward. How do you feel about him in fantasy?
Not great. Not great at all. He's QB 28 on the season. I mean, that's barely streamable in a Superflex league right there. He's completing just 52.8% of his passes, and he's only thrown for 2 touchdowns. I mean, they've got Gabe Davis. They've got Brian Thomas Jr. I know Evan Ingram's been out. They got Christian Kirk. Travis Etienne should be able to be more productive. It just, I don't know if it's I don't think it's bad coaching. I don't think Peterson is a bad coach. But as of right now, as of today, as NFL analysts and fantasy analysts, we were pretty much all wrong on Trevor Lawrence.
I actually think Peterson is on the hot seat. That team is regressing, but
I didn't say he wasn't on the hot seat. I said I don't think that by and large he's a bad coach.
I'm not sure he's a great coach either.
I didn't say he was great.
For the Houston Texans, Dameon Pierce is out. Joe Mixon, trying to come back from that ankle injury, was able to get a limited practice today. Truly a game time decision. If he is able to go on Sunday, how good would you feel putting him in your lineup?
I would be very, very nervous. But, Mixon's tough. And if he can play, I think that Cam Akers didn't do anything that said, oh, we should give him another week. If he's iffy, I think that Mixon's going to be every bit as good as Cam Akers was. Jacksonville gives up the 5th most rushing yards, the 3rd most receptions, 3rd most receptions, and 2nd most receiving yards to running backs. Mixon is a 3-down bell cow back, and it seems like this is going to be a great matchup for him. So hopefully that ankle is good, because I got a couple spots I could really use him in.
Same. I am taking the Texans in this one.
So am I.
And I do think Collins and Diggs will be a good play, because Tank Dell got ruled out today too. Maybe bring some life back for Dalton Schultz too.
Yeah.
Let the fantasy gods hear that. Washington Commanders 2-1 at the 1-2 at the 1-2 Arizona Cardinals. How are you feeling about Jaden Daniels?
I mean, he's QB2 right now. That pass to Terry McLaurin for the touchdown late, that was so beautiful. He threw that thing so high. It's like, man, he's channeling his inner prime Russell Wilson. He threw that ball so high and just dropped it in there. That was gorgeous. It was nice to see that, Terry McLaurin isn't just on the left side of the formation running wind sprints. So it was good to see him back. He's over 28 fantasy points in 2 of 3 games. He's got the 2nd most rush yards of quarterbacks. He's setting up to be everything that we hoped Anthony Richardson would be, everything we hoped Justin Fields would be. It's just, he's playing great. And would I like to see a little more consistency in the passing game? Yeah. I'd like to see maybe, McLaurin be, an 8 to 10 target game player every week. And, who's the other guy? Not De'Ami Brown. Who's their other way?
Luke McCaffrey, Noah Brown.
Yeah, Noah Brown. I wouldn't mind seeing him get involved a little more consistently.
Zach Ertz.
Maybe Ben Sinnott can overtake Zach Ertz. Eckler's going to be out this week, so it's going to be Jeremy McNichols in his spot. So it feels like Brian Robinson will get more of a 3-down role, and McNichols will be just more of a change of pace. He won't really be the passing down back.
Arizona's defense hasn't been great, so I'm looking forward to seeing Jaden Daniels. For Arizona, it was a rough week 3 for James Conner. How are you feeling about him in week 4?
And the Commanders are giving up 5.1 yards per carry, so I'm feeling pretty good. Conner's RB18. He's the guy in Arizona. They're not looking to, share the load. They basically, they're subscribing to the Sean McVay philosophy. We got us a running back, and we're going to run him till he breaks. Then we're going to put somebody else in there, and we're going to run them. Conner, he's a big dude, 230 pounds. He's tough. He plays through a lot of stuff. He's a good pass catcher. I think he's going to have a good week.
I am taking the Commanders.
Did I freeze?
Yeah, you must. I said I'm taking the Commanders.
Oh, so am I. I'm taking the Cardinals, actually.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Commanders had me believing a little bit after seeing them last week. New England Patriots are 1-2 at the 1-2 San Francisco 49ers. What are we doing with the Patriots offense?
Trying to trade them. get players that are productive. Hunter Henry's tight end 8. He had a couple good weeks early. Ramondre Stevenson is RB 23. I think you're starting both of those guys with the understanding that some weeks it's just not going to be there for him. It's tough to buy any part of the Patriots passing game. But I also don't think their protection is so bad. I don't think you want to put in Drake May for an extended period. Let May get some reps in garbage time and kind of get used to the speed of the game that way. But, no offense against Jacoby Brissett, but let him be out there and take the beating. And we'll see if any of the receivers start to develop a bit. Hunter Henry can be a pretty consistent top 12 tight end. I'm comfortable with him there. I think Ramondre is okay, mostly an RB2. So those are really the only two parts of that offense I'm trying to get.
Meanwhile, for the 49ers, Juwan Jennings had a huge week 3. He's looking pretty good there opposite Brandon Ayuk. What are you expecting this week, as it looks like George Kittle will be back?
I expect him to be a little further down the pecking order. I mean, Jennings he's produced big plays when they need them occasionally, and then he had that game last week. It feels like one of those games where somebody's going to overpay for him in the offseason. I don't know what his contract status is, but it's one of those things where it's almost like Noah Brown. Last year he had 2 consecutive games over 150 yards. It feels like it could be that type of situation. But he's a good third receiver. He can be productive. But he's never going to be, if everybody's healthy in that offense, the best he'll ever be is the 5th option.
I am taking the 49ers in this one.
I'm taking the Niners as well.
Next up, the 1-2 Cleveland Browns at the 1-2 Las Vegas Raiders. It has been a little bit of a slow start in the backfield for the Browns. How are you feeling about Jerome Ford this week?
He feels like the guy you want to roster for fantasy right now with Chubb still out. But I'm not sure. I feel like when Chubb comes back, there's, going to be just, he's going to be an afterthought. He'll get a little bit of stuff in the passing game, but I'm not overly. I'm not trying to get him. I think he's a jag sitting at RB 24 on the year. So is he going to have a decent week this week? He should. The Raiders are giving up the 3rd most fantasy points to running backs. The issue is going to be if the Browns get up, do they go to Foreman because he's their banger?
Yeah, and I think it's hurting Ford too. They once again are going to be without both of those tackles, Wills and Conklin, but it is good for him. The Raiders are without Max Crosby. I hope Nick Chubb comes back sometime soon. Speaking of running back options that might make you want to cry, how are you feeling about Zamir White?
Speaking of not feeling great, he's RB 50. His high on the year is 6.8 points. And last week should have been the week that he got it going against Carolina. Alexander Madison is RB 24. He's the guy getting the goal line work. He's the guy getting the passing down work. And I definitely don't want to have Madison anywhere other than a flex. And right now, I don't think Zamir White's startable now.
Yeah. And a little bit tough. Devontae Adams out of this one, so it could be a lot for Brock Bowers. I am not excited about this game, but I'm taking the Raiders at home.
I switched it to the Raiders, and I'm taking the Raiders too.
Probably the best game of the late window, the 3-0 Kansas City Chiefs at the 2-1 Los Angeles Chargers. Dennis, a little bit of a slow start for Travis Kelce. Patrick Mahomes mentioned in his post-game press conference last week that they're seeing a lot of coverage on Kelce, but there's been a lot of talk about getting him going. Do you think that they might get him going this week?
I hope so. I mean, I had an Empire League reset in the offseason, and on the redraft we did, I took Andrews and Kelce thinking I was super smart, and it hasn't worked out very well for me, to be honest. I thought I was going to be in a good spot with them, be able to flex one of them. They'd put up a ton of points. It's been bad. But right now, Rashee Rice is just dominating the targets. He's dominating the receptions. 12 catches on 29 targets? Or he's got 29 targets to Kelce's 12, 24 catches to Kelce's 8, 268 yards to Kelce's 69, and 2 touchdowns to Kelce's 0. I mean, it's Rashee Rice is the show in Kansas City right now. So I guess if I had to take a positive away from this, unlike Baltimore, where Isaiah Likely is taking a bunch of production, no other tight end in Kansas City is taking production away from Kelce. Kelce just isn't producing.
Yeah, I'm fading him a little bit, but I think I'm still rolling him out. And with Derwin James suspended, maybe we'll have a shot at something. For the Chargers, Justin Herbert, they haven't thrown a lot, and now he's banged up. Looks like he will be a true game time decision on Sunday. If he's able to go, are you rolling him out there?
He's QB 29 on the year, which is, one spot behind Trevor Lawrence. So if you've got another option, like, do you have Gardner Minshew? Do you have Snoop Huntley? It's
low.
It's bad. And to top it off, the running game is clicking with J.K. Dobbins. And so it's like there isn't a compelling reason to throw the ball 40 times a game.
I'm not even confident he plays. I actually ranked Taylor Heineke this week because, Herbert was banged up, tried to gut it out last week, got more injured. Kansas City's front's not particularly forgiving. I'm taking the Chiefs in this one.
So am I.
Sunday Night Football, the 3-0 Buffalo Bills at the 1-2 Baltimore Ravens. Dennis, rookie Keon Coleman had about 4 catches in week 1, so we're starting to get a little bit excited, but he's kind of been MIA and not getting as many snaps the last 2 weeks. He did have a 24-yard touchdown strike on Monday night, but that was kind of his only target of the game. How are you feeling about him as a fantasy option?
In redraft, I'm still out.
Yeah.
He played 20 snaps, which was 4th among the Bills wide receivers. That doesn't take into account their tight ends and running backs that catch passes. And he earned just the 1 target. So, Khalil Shakir is the guy there. He has taken over. He's wide receiver 17. He's the wide receiver 1 on the team. Kincaid is tight end 11 and Cook is RB6. They are the next 2 target earners on that team. And it's amazing when you kind of look at, we look at Shakir and we're like, oh, well, he can't be the alpha. And a comp came to me and I was like, let me go look athletically and see like how they compare. And so shout out to Kentley Platt at MathBomb on the Twitter machine and his relative athletic score. And I went and I did a comparison of Khalil Shakir to Amon-Ra St. Brown. So he came in at an 8.45, which is very good. Amon-Ra was just a 7.48. So Shakir profiles as a little bit better athlete. They're both 5'11.5-ish, 197, 196 pounds. So they're like almost the exact same size. Big differences. Amon-Ra ran a 4.6 140. Shakir ran a 4.43. Shakir is faster, but Amon-Ra is quicker. So Shakir had better scores in the 40-yard dash, the 20-yard split, the 10-yard split. But Amon-Ra had better scores in the short shuttle and the 3-cone. And so I'm starting to think like we totally missed the boat on Khalil Shakir. He's the alpha now in Buffalo.
For the Ravens, you mentioned Mark Andrews competing for targets with Isaiah Likely. They've also talked about the rotations they're using, which doesn't seem to bode well. How are you feeling about him in fantasy?
He's tight end 29, and I'm starting to wonder if there wasn't more to that preseason car accident than we were led to believe. I mean, he's currently getting outsnapped by Isaiah Likely, 60 to 58% of the snaps. Likely is sitting at tight end 5, but to be fair, it's off a monster week 1. The Bills give up a lot of production. I wonder why I've got a running back note in there when we're talking about tight ends, so we'll skip that. I believe Andrews is going to be fine season long. We just got to get it going.
Yeah, but until we see something more, I don't think you should be afraid to bench him. Before we were like, he's top 3. I feel a little bit differently about Andrews than Kelsey. I actually did send him to my bench in a couple of places because, that 0 last week was disheartening, but it's not like he was giving you a lot before that.
I think you can make the case for it because he is losing snaps and production to another tight end on his team versus Kelsey, who isn't.
I am going to take the Bills in this one.
I got the Ravens. I believe in Lamar Jackson.
The 0-3 Tennessee Titans at the 1-2 Miami Dolphins. Boy, the Monday Night Football team must be pumped. This is one of their games. Dennis, the Titans and who they get the ball to and who has good games seems to have been all over the board the last 3 weeks. Is there a Titan you feel confident about putting in your lineup?
DeAndre Hopkins has started to come on since he got healthy, and based on reputation alone, I think that's probably where I would be most comfortable. Calvin Ridley is the most explosive of the wide receivers there, and I think it's easy to say, well, I'm comfortable with him as well. Tony Pollard's RB21, and he's making some noise. So it all comes down to what is Will Levis going to do? Can he not make dumb decisions? If he does keep it together, there's some opportunity with Ridley and Hopkins to be able, and Tyler Boyd, to produce in the passing game. I would probably stack them as Hopkins with probably a little safer floor, Ridley with a higher ceiling, and that would be where I would stop.
Yeah, I think if I had to choose any of their weapons, Pollard is probably the one that I feel the best about having the safe floor. But I've been wide receiver feels like a toss-up, and I don't think playing Miami will make that any easier. On the other side, Skylar Thompson injured, may play. I am still leaning toward I think they're going to end up starting Tyler Huntley. But either way, a lot of people took Tyreek Hill expecting he was going to be a big producer for them, and that has been a rough go for the last 2 weeks. Do we have any signs of hope in week 4?
I think it's going to be touch and go. I think I like Huntley as the best option, and he's got a 64.5% completion rate. Baltimore wasn't afraid to let him throw the ball when he filled in for Lamar. But the mission is simple: crossers to Hill and Waddle. I think, is Waddle out, or is he dinged up?
No, Waddle's in there, but
okay. So I think Huntley gives him a good shot. It's just Tennessee's defense is pretty good, and so with Huntley only being there a short time, I think he gives them the best chance. I think ultimately, I think the Titans pull it out.
I'm taking the Dolphins. I have Hill still in wide receiver 2 range, but I don't feel great about it. The other Monday Night Football game, the one that's probably getting the A-team coverage, is 3-0 Seattle Seahawks at the 2-1 Detroit Lions. Dennis, the Seahawks have three pretty good receivers in Metcalf, Lockett, and JSN. We've seen each of them kind of take turns having bigger games and quieter games. What does that do for you when you're coming to fantasy?
It makes it hard to have drafted DK Metcalf because he had the highest draft capital. You probably feel okay with JSN. You know, he was a later pick. So if he gives you the occasional stinker, you're still probably going to feel like you're doing pretty good. Lockett's the one you feel the best about because he was so much of a later pick. So when he scores, it's like, yay, free.
It's free on my bench.
The challenge is that Detroit lost Marcus Davenport, their end opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. And so I don't know if they're going to be able to put pressure on Geno Smith like they need to. So I think DK gets a deep one. I think JSN will get some volume, if not big yardage. I think he catches a few passes, gets into, 12, 15 point range. But it's because it's kind of a lottery with those three guys, somebody's typically left out each week.
Yeah, DK is the one that I feel the best about. I think he's been the most consistent about at least providing points. But hopefully we'll get more of a sense in a couple of weeks here of a rotation because they're still learning a new offensive coordinator too. For Detroit, Jameson Williams had a monster week 1, but he's been very quiet in the 2 weeks since. How are you approaching him for fantasy?
I think he's an upside flex. He's sitting at wide receiver 20, but he put up 1.2 points in week 3. You just have to, when you signed up for him that you were getting that Gabe Davis, Rashid Shaheed kind of wide receiver. Going to have some phenomenal games.
There's too many of those wide receivers right now, and there are only options with all of our good receivers, either having no quarterback or no soft tissue.
It's like casino night at church, and it's just you just don't know what's going to happen. So I think you play him as an upside flex. If he's your wide receiver 6, God bless you, but most teams he's probably the 4 or 5.
Yeah, well, I hope he does well here. I also hope Sam Laporta plays because I've decided I might roll the dice going into Monday Night Football. But you do need to be watching out for that because there is Murphy's Law and the way injuries are going this week. Yeah, you might want to try to pick up Brock Wright. I am taking the Lions.
So am I.
Well, that'll do it for the week 4 slate here. Plenty of things going on. Maybe you're going to a high school football game like I'm going to be doing here in about an hour. But maybe you have some time to kill. Dennis, if you have some time that you're just trying to fill, what can the people do?
They can go to their favorite podcast platform, hit that search bar, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, leave a rating and a comment.
Well, hopefully you guys have a wonderful weekend. I'm looking forward to seeing some high school football here tonight and plenty of NFL action on Sunday and Monday. We will be back on Tuesday with a recap of week 4. Until then, hope you guys have a wonderful weekend.